Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 16 of season 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man called Beetle Mania, because the bad guy for this episode is the Beetle. And nothing says, cartoon show in 2012 like referencing a band that's been broken up since the Nixon administration. But yeah, I guess we can let them that slide since it is the Beatles. But anyway, so let's get right into this episode. Overall, I thought this was a reasonably good episode. Not the strongest of this series, not the worst. Maybe slightly even better than average, but nothing that really made me sit up and say, "Wow." The main focus of this episode is, in some ways, mostly it is the relationship between Peter and MJ. But while Peter is obviously concerned about MJ, and he does have perfectly good reason to be, I don't really think that, beyond showing that Peter is concerned for MJ in reasonable circumstances, there really wasn't that much going on to their relationship. I mean, we did get to see some fun moments. We did get to see some, playful interaction between them, but that was really all there was to it. And since I haven't really said very much about her before, especially not since the first 2 episodes, and this is in a way an episode that really kind of spotlights Mary Jane. We haven't gotten one of those since the one with the Hulk. Let's talk about that. Honestly, character-wise, I was kind of disappointed by what we got from Mary Jane this episode, and it's even given what Peter says, that Mary Jane is very determined. She never really backs down, and that's all well and good. But the way this is illustrated to us is that it just presents Mary Jane as being smarter than everybody around her, and she's just able to basically get her way. Yeah, she's just basically able to get her way whenever she wants. And while determination is all well and good as a character trait, to be a really solid and well-rounded character, characters need flaws. Characters sometimes need to make mistakes and to lose. And Peter is a perfect example of that. He makes mistakes. He gets the stuffing knocked out of him by the bad guys a lot. He doesn't think things through. He's got some decent flaws. Mary Jane, as far as we've seen so far, doesn't have any real flaws, other than maybe being a bit of a workaholic, and I suppose maybe if she's excited about something, a little bit of a blabbermouth. But in terms of real character flaws, she's pretty much completely lacking in them. We're just supposed to take Peter's word that Mary Jane is like this. Now, granted, in the episode with the Hulk, we did get to see Mary Jane showing genuine courage and resourcefulness and all that. But here, it just feels more like it's a case of tell rather than show. And the little bit of show that we do get to see is pretty weak. So I think maybe in terms of storytelling, they were overly relying on the characterization that we got from the episode with the Hulk, which was honestly a pretty good while back. So I don't really think they presented Mary Jane as a character in this episode as well as they really could have. And honestly, I'm reminded of some of the criticisms that I've seen people level at Gwen from the Ben 10 series, which is, of course, a show that was also created by the guys at Man of Action who made this show. And in a nutshell, it's basically kind of the same thing that I was saying, that apparently she's always smarter than everybody around her and more skillful. And I've only seen up to season 2 of Ben 10. So to be perfectly honest, I don't really feel that I can comment as to whether or not that accusation is valid. But I'm honestly afraid that it might possibly be. So I'm just going to present that to you guys, and you can make of it what you will. As I said, I don't really feel that I'm qualified to talk about that particular comparison. I can really only say that I'm just not happy with what we've gotten from Mary Jane this episode. Now, one thing I was very happy to see this episode was once again seeing Luke Cage really step up, take a secondary leadership role, actually a real leadership role, to be honest. When it came to fighting the Beetle, he really was the one taking charge here, which is perfectly suited to Luke Cage, given that he, for a number of years, has been serving as a leader in the Avengers. So him stepping up and taking a command role with the Amazing Friends, that seems only natural given what we've seen in the modern take on Luke Cage. So I did like that. And one moment I will grant was to Mary Jane was her basically mentally psyching out Luke Cage and Iron Fist. They really did have no genuine legal authority to stop her, and if they did, they'd basically have to reveal that they were S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, which I guess they're not supposed to do. I mean, has Nick Fury even ever flat out said whether or not they're allowed to say they're agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? And I was assuming no, because otherwise all he would have had to do is take out a S.H.I.E.L.D. ID card and say, hello lady, we're S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and we're saying you're not allowed to go in this building. It's a matter of your personal safety, national security, blah, 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 blah. Problem solved. Mary Jane, if they do have genuine legal authority, then, Mary Jane is SOL. But, yeah, that didn't happen. Maybe they aren't allowed to do that by Nick Fury, or maybe just doing that just made too much sense and wouldn't have allowed the plot to happen. Which is it? I leave that to your consideration as well. Now, as long as we're talking about the Amazing Friends, let's briefly take a moment to talk about White Tiger. We get to see some decent stuff with her when she finally does her part in the big fight with Beetle at the end. She does do her part. She does do her part well. She does do basically what she said she would, after a false start. But of course, that's true for everybody in the fight with the Beetle. So I did like that. One thing I don't really get is why she seems surprised that Spider-Man knows that cats carry their kittens around in their mouths. I mean, if they were going for some animal-themed hero rivalry riffing on each other, well, okay, but it just doesn't really seem like, if that's what they were going for, that joke worked. To me, it just made me think, well, that's not exactly uncommon knowledge. I mean, Peter isn't required to only know about spiders, although, once again, we are reminded that spiders are not insects, they're arachnids. I think the writers are falling just a little too in love with that joke recently. But anyway, let's continue along talking about the animal-themed folks in this episode. And, of course, the big one besides our heroes is, of course, the Beetle. Longtime Spider-Man foe, been going on since the 60s, although I think he was originally introduced as an opponent of the Human Torch. But naturally, Spider superhero, Beetle supervillain, yeah, that's a real match made in comic book heaven. And Beetle, if you're familiar with him, especially during his tenure as a member of the Thunderbolts, is actually a fairly interesting character. It's just here Beetle has all of one line, and apart from being presented as very smart, very determined, and very skilled and powerful, we don't really get much out of Beetle. And I suppose it's okay to do that. I kind of like to think that they were sort of going for a riff on the Terminator a little bit. Beetle, again, does have only the one line and is just presented as being extraordinarily unstoppable and well prepared. Now, take out the whole well prepared thing, and that's really what I would have liked to have seen from a couple episodes back with the Juggernaut. But that's done and done, so there's that. I did like that if you're familiar with the history of the character, then you would recognize a lot of the images, the Beetle armors that we see, and the mental imagery as various Beetle suits that have been worn by the character over the years. So as a fan of the comics, I did appreciate that. Let me see here. Oh yeah, of course we can't forget the cameo this episode by superhero psychiatrist Doc Samson. Him being the fellow with the green hair and the yellow lightning bolt on the red t-shirt, for those of you who are not familiar with the comics. I'm not really sure why they particularly chose to go with what I believe is his 1980s outfit for the character this time around. I suppose it's just Doc Samson is really best known as a supporting character in the Hulk comics, and I would have to imagine that's probably considered his most iconic outfit. So, okay, I can see why. I think maybe they could have gone for something a little bit less retro look for him and still kept him recognizable for the fans. But again, that's just a treat for the people who read the comics. So I'm not gonna beat the show too much up for that. And I certainly can't fault the show for throwing in a very amusing reference to The Price is Right. Not sure exactly how I feel about Ava being turned into one of Barker's beauties, especially given some of the rather sordid history of stuff that went on behind the scenes at The Price is Right. I only really know about that sort of thing simply because I'm a fan of the show. I genuinely do enjoy The Price is Right, and if you don't know what I'm talking, if you're only familiar with Drew Carey as the host, then just don't worry about what I've said. It's all about the previous host, Bob Barker. Okay, so we're just gonna leave that. And I think, and this is just my guess, that that little brief bit of mental imagery where we see the characters hanging out in the diner, I think maybe that was meant as a nod to Seinfeld, the of course very venerable, very much loved 90s sitcom. So, it's sad, but apart from that, I don't think I really have too much to say about this episode. Now, certainly at the end, the big fight with the Beetle, where our heroes finally, get it together and manage to take him down, that was exciting. And it felt like a victory that was earned. And I did like that they took some time for Nick Fury to, give our heroes some well-deserved praise. We've seen the Amazing Friends spend more time screwing up, really, in my book, than we've seen them not exactly succeeding, but behaving in a smart superhero fashion. We've certainly seen them behaving in a dumb superhero fashion lots. And honestly, even Nova seemed to have slightly improved in terms of maturity in this episode. Although I do say slightly with just a little. Nova, out of everybody on The Amazing Friends, still has the furthest to go. Of that, I have no doubt. So, yeah, there you have it. Other than a good fight against a formidable opponent, and some nice animation thrown around in there as well, I guess I should add, it to me didn't really feel like this episode had very much going on. It's solid enough, but as I said earlier, there's just really nothing that makes me sit up and go, wow, about this episode. And that's going to do it for this review, folks. I'm sorry if I'm cutting things a little bit short. One, I genuinely just didn't have very much to say about this episode. And two, I'm actually heading out on vacation tomorrow, so the review for the next episode is going to be delayed probably until next weekend. So sorry about that, but I'm going on vacation to Australia, so c'est la vie, right? Anyway, folks, that's all I have for you. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. As always, you can, of course, follow me on Twitter as Who's Your Jedi. And until next time, take care and have a good one.